Hey there, welcome to Table to Stage. I'm Jordan Worma, and this is my podcast, my continuing mission to explore creativity through the stories and experiences of creators in my home state of Connecticut and the wider world. Today's creator is Lisa Natcharian of the Storyteller's Cottage. Now, if this isn't your first time listening to Table to Stage, then you've probably heard me say before that I think storytelling is the thread that runs through all art. And a place dedicated to storytelling and the creative minds that tell them is, for me anyway, a wonderful thing. Lisa opened the Storyteller's Cottage in Simsbury almost by accident, and it's a truly unique place for creatively minded people, from writers to adventurers. Also, don't forget, make sure to leave your rating and review of the show on Apple Podcasts. And if you're an Android user like me, you can still leave a review or a comment using other services like Podbean or Castbox or Podknife and others. It's amazing how much impact every review can have on an independent podcast like this one. And if you listen to other shows, then drop them a few stars while you're at it. You can also send your complaints and grievances or your encouragement to tabletostage@gmail.com. I'll read it. I'll respond. Beyond that, who knows? Okay, so let's hear from the owner of the Storyteller's Cottage, Lisa Natcharian. We're in Simsbury now, but you're not originally from Simsbury, right?
I am not.
Okay, so where did you come from?
So I grew up in Springfield and lived in Massachusetts most of my life, and we moved to Simsbury about 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay. What drew you to the area?
My oldest son was accepted to Loomis Chaffee, and he didn't want to board, and my husband still works in Springfield, so we decided to make a sort of change of scenery.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a nice area. It's convenient for all of that. How did you end up with the Storyteller's Cottage? What was the brainchild for this space?
So we weren't actually planning on making a Storyteller's Cottage until we saw the house.
Yeah.
We were out looking for commercial property to invest in, and this house is connected literally on the back to the commercial property next door called Fiddler's Green. And we came to look at that, and the real estate agent showed us this house and said, this comes with it. It's like a throw-in. And it's currently being used for offices, and you can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
And I thought, I can do whatever I want with it? Okay. Challenge accepted.
Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful old house.
It is, and it's in such good condition.
Yeah.
That's what we were very lucky to find. The previous owner did all of the major renovations, so all we had to do was just decorate it.
So what was the thought when you saw this house? Was it, this is a place for storytelling, or how did you decide that this was the best way to use the space?
So I didn't have a direct plan right off the bat, like, aha, I know exactly what's going to happen here. I sort of drew together all the things that I like personally.
Okay.
And it came from a place of, I wish there was more to do around here. Every time I want to do something different, I need to go somewhere else.
Right.
So wouldn't it be cool if there was a place right here in town where lots of fun things happen? And to me, fun things all have to do with books and storytelling and creativity. And, I thought, should this be a bookstore with those kinds of events? Should this be an event space where you just rent it? And none of those things are sustainable all by themselves. So we kind of layered on a lot of different things so that the stuff like the mystery rooms, which are a big moneymaker, can sustain us trying some other things. Let's say, we're having a midnight dinner. Let's see if anyone wants to come. And that's fine. If no one comes, then we're still okay.
Oh, okay. Now, I mean, when you saw the space and you thought, I want to do fun things, and they're all story-based and creativity-based, was that something that you grew up just immersed in, was, stories and telling stories and reading stories? Like, why was that something that you were so drawn to?
Because I'm a book nerd. I always have been. From the very beginning, I loved to read. I learned to read really early, and that's what I did. I was the kid whose mother said, will you please go outside? Because all I wanted to do was just get a book and sit and read it. And we'd go to the library every week and take out as many books as were allowed, and I'd read through them and then just wait until I could go back and get some more.
Yeah. What kind of books were you reading early on?
I really liked Nancy Drew early on, like mysteries and anything that had a little bit of a fantasy angle to it, because, reading can transport you to another place.
Oh, it sure can. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned fantasy. Was Tolkien something that you were reading?
No, interestingly not. I couldn't, I like to read really fast, and that's pretty dense. So you had to slow down to understand it.
Right.
So
yeah. Before you would read The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings, you had to read the histories of the worlds and learn the languages. Yeah. Right. It did feel like, for me too, it felt like there was a high bar that you had to get over before you could even enter into those books.
Right.
But like Nancy Drew and some of the other stuff or in that genre was a little bit more accessible.
Right.
And if you're reading just massive amounts of books, like from one story to the next, it must have been kind of satisfying to you going to the library and being able to get all those different stories.
Oh, absolutely. It's sort of like when you walk into a candy store, if someone tells you can have as much as you want. That's what it feels like.
Right. Well, at least the candy you don't have to return.
Right.
So as you were developing this love of reading and this love of story, what was your progression like as far as the different books that you were drawn to?
Once I started having books assigned to me in school, I started to realize, there's more to life than just mysteries. It's really interesting to understand why people do what they do. So I began to start to like the kinds of books where it's like an analysis of someone's psyche.
Oh, okay.
And I ended up studying psychology in college. So
what are some of the books that? Okay, authors. Were there authors that you were drawn to at the
honestly,
time?
I can't remember back that far.
Oh, that's fair. I wish I could remember the books that I really sparked it. I remember there were the Three Investigators series, which is kind of similar to Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys and stuff like that. And then there were the like A House with a Clock in Its Walls and the Goosebumps series and all that kind of stuff was something that I would read when I was a kid. And then that progressed for me to like Stephen King and Dean Koontz and stuff like that. And then later on, I started getting into biographies and historical pieces and stuff like that. Have you always just been drawn to fiction throughout the years? Or?
No, actually, I really love to just now go to the library and grab a whole pile of nonfiction.
Okay.
To sort of satisfy that urge to know things. I just want to understand how everything works.
Yeah.
So go out and let someone who's an expert who wrote a book about something just explain to me how that subject works.
Yeah. I mean, fiction, nonfiction, whatever it is, it's all really about the story. Has there ever been something you've been able to identify as like a through line for you as far as what elements of a story you really drawn to?
I like the twist ending, for
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I like when there's a lot of complicated action, a lot of different characters, and a lot of people who you can't quite tell if you know them or they're showing you something.
Are there any
not themselves.
Examples of current books that fit that for you?
Everything written by Kate Atkinson, I really find fascinating. She has a lot of different characters, all going in different directions, all with a really interesting backstory and goal, and can never quite tell where she's going with that.
Yeah. As a lover of stories, have you ever tried writing your own?
No.
No. Okay.
And no, because I feel like I could never do as well as the ones that I really love.
Okay. Have you, I mean, now that you've got this amazing space here and you're able to interact with with writers and storytellers and all these other people, like, have you been able to, I don't want to say gain an appreciation, because clearly it's something that you've had an appreciation for a long time, but has it given you any insight into the process of writing or the way an author goes about telling a story? Like, what's your interaction been with those people since you had since you've had them here?
So paradoxically, the more I work, the less
twist.
I have time, yes, to read or to even sit down and chat with everyone who's here. When there's an author here, I'm usually doing something else.
Yeah.
So I haven't had as much of a chance as I'd like to learn from all the talented people who are coming through here.
Oh, that's got to be difficult for you to kind of have that, you're immersed in it just by the nature of what you're doing here, but also maybe separated more than you had been previously.
Yes.
How do you go about satisfying those urges for stories and those worlds now that you've got that wall between you?
Every couple of months I sneak away and I read a book, but that's really all I can do right now. Yeah.
Okay. So what kind of things are you doing with this space now? I mean, I know you've got creators from all different areas that kind of congregate here. What is it that you're offering them that draws them here?
So we're celebrating storytelling in all its different forms. So visual storytelling, written storytelling, audible storytelling, and we're sort of becoming a hub for creativity. And that's sort of a magnet for people who are not only looking for their tribe, but also looking for inspiration. Because a lot of times when you're around a lot of creative people, it makes you start to spark. So what we're offering is everything we can think of for readers, for writers, for fans. And it ranges from author talks and storytelling to writing workshops and retreats. And we have a lot of really fun immersive events.
Okay.
So, if you want to feel like you have stepped into another world, you can come to a Harry Potter event for kids or adults, or a live murder mystery where you're one of the characters in it. We've got everything we can think of. We throw it out there.
Yeah. Now, when you opened up this space to the creative community, did you know that this area could provide the clientele you thought you could draw? Like, did you know the creative community was here?
I hoped it was here. We were still relatively new to town when we decided to launch this. And because this is such an unusual business model, there's no other way to research this, right? Try to figure out.
You didn't call all the other storytellers' cottages everywhere and get a group together?
Nope. You can't even use the internet. There's no way to really and analyze whether it's going to work or not before it started. So we launched into it hoping that it was going to work. And I'm pleasantly surprised because there is quite a deep writers community here.
When did you open this space?
We bought it at the end of 2016, and we were able to open in October 2017.
Okay. Now, when you first opened the doors here, was there a line a mile long of people that have been dying for a space like this? Or was it more of a slow trickle as people discovered that it was here? There's
a lot of drop-ins.
Yeah.
So you can call it a trickle, but to me, I assumed I was going to be here alone for a long time with my books. And people started right off the bat just popping in saying, I've heard about you. I saw your sign. Can you tell me what you do?
Yeah.
And what's really fun is to give them a tour and explain what we do. And bask in their reaction, which is generally something along the lines of, I love it, can I live here?
As far as like people dropping in to use the space, how does that work? Like, can just somebody walk in off the street and just crash on the chair and just hang out and read?
Yep, all that. So we're open every day except for Mondays, and we're open to the public. There's no entry fee. You can pop in at any time and read. You can write. You can stop into our literary cafe and have a snack, some tea. You can bring your friends. As long as there's not something already happening in a room, anyone is welcome to use that room.
Wow.
So if you did, for example, want to use the room we're in today, which is decorated like a castle, and you needed it for a particular time, you could rent that so that then it's yours and no one else is allowed to pop in while you're there doing your thing.
Wow. Now, I mean, you've got this space that's for readers, for writers, for storytellers, or story consumers of just about any type. But also, like, right across the street, you've got a really incredible library. So how do you have a relationship with the library? How does that work where you've got crossover in the storytelling department? How are you working with the library and sort of integrating with the community offerings?
So there are, in fact, two libraries across the street,
Yeah.
the public library and the Simsbury Free Library. And we do have relationships with both of them to do complementary activities. So, for example, with the public library, during the month of November, which is known as National Novel Writing Month, or NaNoWriMo, there's a national challenge for people to write 50,000 words in whatever project they're working on. And the library puts together a whole month of activities, and a lot of those they'll hold here. So they, it's write-ins with little games and writing prompts and prizes and food and all that sort of thing. And we host that right up until the very last day of November, until midnight. That's the deadline to finish your 50,000 words. We have a lot of fun things happening there. And the Simsbury Free Library across the street is a gorgeous space that we just recently partnered with them to run a screenwriting weekend where we had the activities over there because they're bigger, and brought in screenwriting professionals from California to come and give classes and lectures to people who wanted to break into the business.
Wow. Now, what other sorts of storytelling offerings do you have here? I mean, you mentioned this room that we're in already, which looks like a set from Game of Thrones or, some high fantasy, something or other. It's a beautiful room, and I can think of a million ways I could use it personally. But you've got other rooms with different themes, and they evoke different settings, different emotional responses. What sorts of things happen in each of these rooms that you offer, and what do other people use them for?
So we have a lot of different things in each different room. So the first room that you see downstairs is a Victorian library. It's sort of steampunky. And that one we use for author talks and story times, but also it's one of our mystery room games, which has a Victorian murder mystery theme. Across the hall is a room we call the Jane Austen Regency Salon, which is a dining room. And we try to use that for not just writing classes, but also special intimate dinners with authors. So you can come and have a dinner with an author who's about to have an event and sit around and talk with them about their process, their books, and really get a chance to get to know maybe someone local who you've admired.
Yeah.
The kitchen is sort of a British country look. It's got this humongous old-fashioned fireplace, and we set it up kind of like a bistro so that if you want to pop in and have your own little table to sit and write or have a snack, it's like a literary Starbucks. You can just come in, have a seat, and enjoy yourself for a while. And then upstairs, everything is very highly themed, as you mentioned.
Yes.
And we use these rooms, the one that looks like a medieval castle. It's hidden behind a mysterious bookcase door in the wall.
That's an amazing door.
Yes. And another room next to that is sort of inspired by the Harry Potter series. It looks like the Gryffindor common room. And these rooms we use for our children's activities that have a Harry Potter theme, but also for any of our fantasy writing classes. Our Dungeons and Dragons groups are here. And you asked how do other people use the rooms. These are the rooms that people like to rent and have really fantastic parties in.
Yeah.
And they can bring in anything they want to. They can bring in food, drinks, games. We had a whole series of parents come who had a lot of Harry Potter themed activities planned. They took the whole upstairs and made a lot of kids really happy.
I would imagine so. In terms of like having all these different themed rooms and being able to draw, writers or other creative people in to use this space kind of as a communal experience, have you found or have you heard from people who have been using the space what some of the benefits that they draw from being here surrounded by other creative people and really this massive support system that's kind of in place for them? Have you heard from them what they're taking away from it?
We are offering a lot of networking opportunities, specifically, not just you can drop in and see if you find somebody, but it's those things that we hear from people. That was really helpful. We had an author networking brunch recently where just anyone who's a local author or an aspiring author could pop in, $10, have brunch, and they stayed for hours all chatting with each other. And you know, sometimes you need an editor or a name of an agent or an illustrator. It's that kind of great networking that's becoming really helpful for the locals.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. How many people do you have like regularly that show up? People you know they're going to be here on a certain day, or you know they'll say, you know, I've been writing since I came here, and I'm about to publish something or whatever that I created in the Storyteller's Cottage.
So it's funny. Authors kind of go in cycles. I think the creative process, sometimes you'll run up against a wall. For a while, you'll see the same person or a group of people. A lot of our authors like to get their friends together and sit and write at the same time. And they'll come regularly for months, and then suddenly it's over.
You don't see them anymore,
they're stuck on something. So, and then it'll be a different groups. Our live murder mysteries actually are starting to attract returning customers who are coming all the way from Boston.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Because it's an unusual event. It's a game that you have agency in. So when you come to the live murder mystery as a guest, you find actors in every room who are all suspects in a murder, and it's up to you to interrogate them and find out who's lying and what they know. But also, what the guests do informs the story, so it can change a little bit, almost like those choose your own ending books. Not that the killer that you're trying to find changes, but the guests feel like they are actually part of the story as it moves along.
Right. Well, I mean, that's something I think has demonstrated itself to be a universal appeal for centuries, is the idea of not just consuming a story, but being a part of a story. Like storytelling, whether it's, you know, just oral traditions or whether it's in novels, film, even a painting tells a story. Storytelling has been such an important part of culture going back centuries and, you know, millennia. Do you see how the history of storytelling fits into where you're taking something like this moving forward, as far as engaging community members and encouraging them to participate in the rich tradition of storytelling?
Stories have been used throughout history as ways to explain or illustrate points that you want people to learn.
Right.
And in the political climate today, it sort of feels like people are spreading apart. They're no longer learning from each other because everyone is hiding in their house.
Right.
And input they're getting is from social media, and it's all the kind of thing that tears people apart as opposed to brings them together. And in a place like this, not only are people coming together, but they're coming together in a way where they can learn from each other, which is sort of missing in a lot of the... I don't know if I'm explaining this.
There's like a built-in openness. Like if you walk through this door, it seems like you're coming in open-minded, willing to engage with other people in creative process, which, like you're saying, doesn't seem to be happening very often in other spaces these days.
Yeah.
What are you doing to encourage that, or how are people using what you offer to encourage their own engagement with others or with the community at a larger scale?
So we were trying to offer a lot of events where it's okay to come by yourself, with the idea
it's hard to do.
It is hard to do, that's for sure. So we try to make it where you're not like walking into a house full of strangers. You're walking into a place where we welcome you, and then we have a lot of activities available so that you don't have to figure out what to say to that person you don't know. It's almost like icebreaker games. You're doing things together, and then suddenly you do know each other.
Yeah.
So we try to provide a place for people to feel comfortable, and then what they do when they get here is up to them. And we sort of step back and enjoy watching them meet each other and hit it off.
Right. Now, is there something specific that you do to engage the people who come to, say, a murder mystery alone? Like if they're showing up, they're taking that that plunge, is there a specific way that you engage that person to sort of integrate them into this larger story?
So in the case of the murder mystery, there are a ton of staff here, and everybody has their eye out for the one who's alone. And it's a little bit like being a host of a party when you want to make sure that everybody finds someone to talk to. You go and you find the one who's alone, you talk to that person, and then you introduce them to, oh, have you met this one?
Sure.
And let them go off together and see if they, enjoy each other's company. So we do try to, when people walk in by themselves, make them feel like they're already our friends, so they feel comfortable, and then they can start to open up.
Sure. How does the murder mystery work? Is it like period costumes and that whole thing, or is it more casual?
So it's definitely a dress-up event. You don't have to dress up in period costume, but they're held quarterly, and each one is a different storyline. So, for example, the one that's coming up in June is called Murder at the Timeless Cottage, and the idea is that a whole group of authors from past and present are meeting for their annual special convention that they do by time machine. So the ones from the past can get here, and when there's something that's wrong. There's someone's been. I'm not going to give too much away, but there's something that's wrong. There's a reason that they need to come and speak with each other. And all the guests are also invited to dress as their favorite author. So it's up to them how crazy they want to get with their costuming. They can just come in a nice dress or, pants and shirt, or they can really dress. And this is the place to do it. If you like that kind of thing, it's great idea to come and do it here.
So actually people can come in and embody a character of their own.
Yes.
And play along with the story in that way?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if, let's say I want to be Agatha Christie, I can come in and I can act like Agatha Christie all night long. Yeah. And I can, interrogate people in her voice, and I can ask the kinds of things that she would ask. I can throw out ideas, like I think the murderer left their monogrammed handkerchief in the fireplace, and just see what happens.
Now, is this a kind of thing where people are hunting for clues throughout the house, or is it more of interaction clue based?
It's interaction clue based.
Okay.
Each person who's a suspect has information to share, and so the idea is to go around and ask them where they were at the time of the murder and what else they know about the other characters. So there's 2 pieces of information that you need to collect from each person, and then you have to figure out who's lying, which of those pieces of information is not true, and what does it point towards. And during the evening, there is another murder, so we purposely make it so it's not that easy to figure out.
Right.
Suddenly, the person you thought it was is dead, so it can't be that one.
Now, like that's one way of communal storytelling. There's a through line everybody has to follow. But yeah, I mean, interacting and asking questions and stuff can change the feel of the game, I would guess. But you have other ways for interactive storytelling here, like with the mystery rooms. In those situations, you're more likely to have a group of people who really know each other pretty well, I would guess. Have you noticed a difference between the way a group of people familiar with each other, whether it's friends, family, whatever, goes about solving that mystery, as opposed to a bunch of strangers trying to solve the murder mystery?
Strangers are a lot more polite to each other.
I would have guessed that, yeah.
We watch a lot of games. When we have our mystery room games, there is a camera in the room and a game master outside the room watching, so they can give extra hints if necessary. And the family dynamic is very entertaining in a lot of these groups. When the strangers are here, they're not strangers for very long, though, because once they start to play, as you're playing another character, you can be something that you're not. And a lot of people who are shy are not shy when they're playing a character.
Ah, interesting.
So, for example, the last murder mystery we had, my character was French, so I spent the whole night speaking in a French accent. And when you do that, you're very flamboyant, and that's not me. But in character, it was easy to be that way.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to put on that French affectation without being a little bit boisterous,
Yes.
I think, right? Now, how many different mystery rooms do you offer here?
We have 3 different stories.
Okay.
One is called The Detective's Dinner Party. There's no dinner involved. It's just the backstory. The idea is that you're invited to a dinner party, but when you get here, you find out your host has been murdered. So you
Clue.
need to. Yes. Yeah. It's like a live game. of Clue.
Okay.
The second one is called The Dame Disappears, and that's an Agatha Christie-based mystery. The idea is Agatha has disappeared, and you're with Scotland Yard, and you need to figure out where she went and if she's ever coming back. And in her real life, she did disappear for 11 days. And turned out that she was just mad at her husband. But we thought of a new ending to this, so it's fun to imagine what was she doing for these 11 days?
Yeah.
Something else. That's way more exciting. And then the third room is called The Legend of the Fairy Queen. And that one, you start off in a bedroom with the backstory that you're staying with your grandparents in a house where fairies live in the walls. And you start to get messages. You're finding messages from these fairies. They need your help because the dragons have opened a portal from the other side, and you need to find an artifact to close the portal.
Okay. Now, do you have like difficulty ratings on these rooms? Like, are they appropriate for all ages or
They are appropriate for all ages. There's nothing scary or gory, and again, you're never locked in any of these rooms. So
Right.
It's a mystery that you're solving, not trying to find a key to get out. They do have different difficulty levels. We don't rate them, but in general, the Dame is the easiest one, and the Legend of the Fairy Queen is the hardest one. They are appropriate for all ages, meaning they're quite hard. So for adults to get through, they need to work pretty hard. When we have kids come into the room, we give them extra hints, so it's
all right.
accessible to them.
Sure. Now, I know that with a lot of like the escape room things that are popping up everywhere, a lot of it is really, high technology. There's iPads at play. There's all kinds of stuff. So are you like a digitally focused mystery, or is it more of an analog experience?
It's definitely an analog experience. It's based on the space, the house.
Okay.
So if you were to, in a story, walk into a circa 1896 Victorian house, you wouldn't expect to see an iPad or anything else digital.
Well, you just said you had time travel here.
In the way that time travel appears in the books, where it's very organic as opposed to techie. But we do have, I'll call them tricks in the room that are based on electronics, but you can't see them. Okay. You can't see that part of them. Right. Something happens and you're like, what? But it's integrated into the feeling of the room, so it still feels time appropriate.
Right. You mentioned that the rooms kind of use the feel of the house, and it seems like all of the different offerings in the house integrate the actual history of the house in some way. Do you think that, let's say this house hadn't appeared out of nowhere as a throw-in on something, do you think that this same space would work in like an abandoned warehouse or in an industrial park where a lot of different spaces are popping up because they're available?
It would be very different.
Yeah.
The concept here really depends on the house. And if we were to try to build it somewhere else, it would have to be really a different concept.
Yeah.
It would be very hard to recreate this comfortable atmosphere in a warehouse.
How do you go about then taking this? I mean, how old is this house? It's
1896 is when it was built.
Okay, so it's 120-ish years old, right? There's a lot of history that comes along with a 120-year-old house. You said it was offices before you moved in and did all this. Was your project more about restoring the space, or was it really about converting it into someplace to facilitate a larger vision?
I really wanted to make it right again. When you see an old house, especially from the outside, you imagine what it should look like on the inside. And very often you're disappointed when you get inside and it's been modernized and it's all wrong.
Yeah.
And
Berber carpet and and the cubicle walls and all that stuff. Yeah.
Right. And it did look like that. There were just plain white walls and fluorescent lighting, and there it is, the Berber carpet.
Yeah.
But it didn't take too much because the bones of the house are still here,
Right.
to pull it back into sort of its realm where it belongs.
Well, I mean, as soon as you walk in that front door, that entryway is pretty striking with the woodwork and all that stuff. So when you're bringing all this stuff back from its, I have this picture of late 70s, early 80s office space that I've seen put into other old houses. I imagine that by sort of bringing all these unique features of the house back to life, it had to have been kind of inspiring as you're putting all these rooms together.
It was.
Yeah.
And I feel really lucky, too, that I was able to make it look the way I imagined it should look because of the fact that the major renovation was done. There was no humongous investment that I had to make just to hold up the walls or,
Well, that's good.
Yeah, that was done. It was ready to roll. So I was able to imagine what I wanted and then go out to Craigslist and buy furniture that is perfect for the space, but nobody wanted.
Right.
So I also sort of felt like I'm saving all these things. I'm making it right, make it nice, put the house the way it belongs, and then take all this furniture that nobody wants. It's in their garage. It was their grandmother's, and put it again in a space where it belongs. So it sort of like comes back to life.
As you're bringing the house back, did any of the features that you unearthed or restored inspire you to take a different direction with any of the house, or was it really just you had a vision for how it was going to look and you just followed that?
It was the house first, because each space does have a little bit of color in it, and some overarching features that I didn't want to change. So, for example, in the dining room, there's a fireplace, and it's got this beautiful green tile around it.
Yeah.
So that had to stay. It's worked around that with the ideas to make it complement that. The spaces like the one we're in now, which was absolutely plain, there was nothing here at all. That's where I could go to town.
Right.
I think we need to turn this into a castle. Because if I was reading a book and someone, walked into an old house and found a secret door and behind it there was a castle, I would say, that's an awesome book.
Oh, yeah.
and I want to live there and I want to do that. So.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of that just walking through the whole house. Like, the bookshelf door is like, you've got this secret cavern back here. It's really very excellently done, and it comes across that there was so much work put into the house. What do you see as the future for the Storyteller's Cottage? Is it more murder mysteries and mystery rooms? Is it more author talks? Like, do you have anything that you've got in your mind that you see being the next evolution of this space?
So we're going to be changing over our mystery room themes this summer to 3 different games.
Okay.
Not all at the same time, but we're starting over the summer working on the new theming. The murder mystery parties have been super popular, so we're going to start to add more of those, and each one of those, we'll come up with a new theme for those.
Sure.
The smaller events, we're trying to make more intimate, so that regardless of the fact that this is a small space, people are going to want to come specifically because it's a small event and they get sort of hands-on with somebody important and one-on-one discussion.
So like bringing authors in to meet with people, that kind of thing?
Right. And along the lines of the Dinner with an Author event, where it's not just people coming to listen to someone talk. It's people coming to be with somebody. Like,
okay.
You sit down and you meet them and you're,
I have this image of my head of like speed dating, but with authors.
That is a good idea.
Like you get 2 minutes to ask your questions.
Right. I kind of like that. Because we do have a lot of people who come in and say, I need more help learning how to get published. And that's a neat idea, to be able to have a lineup.
Right.
Just keep asking.
I get a 10% finder's fee.
Okay.
So new mystery rooms, new murder mysteries, more author events.
New classes with different topics. We're starting to learn what types of things people want to know more about. So we have more children's classes at different times, all with different themes, and more adult classes with more practical themes, where like the how to get published and where are you finding an agent, and that sort of thing.
Do you do like any creative writing classes or any visual arts stuff that you have?
We do screenwriting classes. Mm-hmm. Introduction to screenwriting and adapting novels for the screen. We did have Matt Ryan, the cartoonist, come in and do a class on graphic novels last year. That was fun, but he's a busy guy. So
I'd imagine, yeah. So I like to get a recommendation for anything that's new and interesting that you want other people to try out.
I think the local community of escape rooms is a great thing for people to experience. Yeah. There are all in the greater Hartford area, a whole series of other rooms that are a great way to enjoy what you learn here. And there's a woman who lives in Simsbury who runs complexity rooms in Farmington. Okay. And her rooms are great. And we've got a cooperative game going where you can pick up a card at each one of the 5 greater Hartford rooms. And there's a puzzle on it. And you have to go to each room to find one piece of the puzzle, one bit of this riddle. Yeah. And then once you get to them all, you can solve the puzzle.
That's
a lot
cool.
of fun.
That's a good way to interact with other businesses and all that stuff. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate the time, and I love the space.
Come back anytime.
Oh, I will. Thank you. Thank you again to Lisa for speaking with me about the Storyteller's Cottage. If you're in the Simsbury area, even if you're just passing through, I hope you'll stop in and take a look around. It's a fascinating and really honestly inspiring space. You can visit storytellerscottage.com to find out more about their offerings, events, escape rooms, and more. And make sure to follow them on Facebook so you don't miss out on all the fun activities coming later this year. Now, while you're scrolling through your Facebook feed, why not jump on over to the Table to Stage page and follow the pod there? You can also keep up with the show on Instagram and Twitter. And of course, you should subscribe on your Android device using either Google Play Music or Google Podcasts or one of the other podcatchers. Or if you're one of the few people who uses Apple products, then head over to iTunes and subscribe on there. Every rating and review goes a long way toward picking up new listeners for the show, so help spread the word. I also want to take a moment to plug a few of my favorite podcasts. Couch Crouches, which I'm sure you're all probably tired of hearing about from me, but if you're into geek culture and great chemistry among friends, give it a go. Song Salad, another one of my favorites, is just a fun time for everyone, with Shannon Deep and Scott Wasserman creating a new song from scratch every week. And one that I only recently really started listening to, it's called The Story Behind. Emily Prokop gives the fascinating backstory to some of the most mundane objects you can think of. It's really great stuff. All right, that's it for now. Until next time, keep creating.